Remember the good old days where March Madness was actually madness? No, you couldn't close your eyes, have lotion and goon in your right hand while using ESPN Auto Pick to get a 90th percentile bracket. 1 and 2 seeds used to lose. Chaos was in every single game. Now, I'm mostly joking, and all chalk Final Four is not killing college basketball. We're not going to die, but today I'm going to take you back in time, where the grass was green, the birds used to chirp, the sun would beam on your face, and life was good. This was the 2023 NCAA tournament and the most chaotic Final Four we've ever seen. It literally made zero sense whatsoever, and that's why I love it so much. Crazy, dramatic, but amazing. It's like having a Latina girlfriend. We saw buzzer beaters, we saw 16 seeds beating ones, we saw 3 newcomers to the Final Four. One of the most dominant runs in college basketball history, plus it was the first time ever where no seed better than 4 made the Final Four. Yes, this all happened in 1 year. So how did 2023 March Madness break all the rules that we knew about college basketball? Well, watch to the end and you'll find out. Plus, get comfortable. This is going to be a long one. It all started in the South region with a dominant #1 overall seed in Alabama that looked like a Final Four lock. Plus, we had an Ivy League underdog in Princeton that went on a Cinderella run, and a team that most countered out in San Diego State. The Crimson Tide had just swept the SEC tournament easily. They had future second overall NBA pick Brandon Miller, and Nate Oates had one of his deepest rosters to date. Analysts were creaming about Alabama. This was finally their year, except March Madness does not care about expectations. Before we even get to how Alabama went down, let's talk about the absolute dumpster fire of the rest of the region. The #2 seed Arizona, considered by their fans as a basketball school, choked in the first round again. And this is off topic, but how can you be a basketball school while not making a Final Four since 2001? 24 years, you are a party school, and plus, they lost to your future lawyers, doctors, and politicians from Princeton. You already knew that this tournament was going to be something else, and this wasn't even the best upset we saw. You'll have to wait till later in the video. And this wasn't a fluke win, because Princeton turned around and beat #7 Mizzou by double digits in the round of 32, and suddenly the bottom half of the South region was as wide open as Bonnie Blue. But up top, the #1 overall seed Alabama was still rolling, or so we thought. Now let's talk about San Diego State, and if you filled out a bracket, you probably had Bama or maybe Creighton taking this region, but the Aztecs, they could play some great defense. In your mind, you thought they were another OK Mountain West team that would never get to the second weekend. San Diego State's tournament run almost ended before it even started. The 5 versus 12 matchup is a bracket killer every year, and Charleston was one of the hottest mid-majors in the country, and this game was ugly. Charleston wanted to run and shoot threes, but San Diego State said, nah, we're turning this into a fist fight in a phone booth, and I love that saying. I got it from Joel Klatt. Despite shooting just around 40%, the Aztecs bullied Charleston on the glass, held them to 32% shooting, and escaped narrowly with a 63-57 win. Not pretty, but survive and advance. Round 2, the Furman fairy tale ends. Furman was fresh off their buzzer-beating win over Virginia, and people were saying that this was going to be the Cinderella of the tournament, but San Diego State had no interest in all of that. They suffocated Furman, holding them to, again, 30% shooting, forcing 19 turnovers, and winning by 23. This is when people started to say, okay, maybe SDSU is kind of legit. No, I'm kidding, because they were about to play Bama, and there was no way they could pull it off. The Sweet 16, the moment that changed everything. Bama had destroyed their first 2 opponents, but here's the thing about 1 seeds in March Madness. They always run into a team that can slow the game down and make them uncomfortable. It's not rocket science why Alabama lost this game. Brandon Miller's stat line: 3 for 19 from the field, 1 for 10 from 3, 6 turnovers. SDSU overwhelmed the Crimson Tide. They forced bad shots. They threw Bama out of rhythm, and the #1 overall seed was gone. The Elite Eight, the controversial win over Creighton. And if you watched this game, you knew how intense it was. SDSU and Creighton were neck and neck the entire way. Neither team ever really gained full control. Then came the controversy. Tied 56 all with just seconds left. SDSU's Darius Terrion Trammell drove to the rim, threw up a floater, and he got fouled with 1.2 seconds left. And this seems like a golden rule in hoops. Don't call a foul in the closing moments of a game. Let the players figure it out, and Creighton fans were absolutely heated. But come on, Ryan Nembhard pushed him, and if you recognize the name, it's because he now plays for Gonzaga. Trammell missed the first free throw, but hit the second, 57-56. None of that blue blood stuff. San Diego State was in the Final Four for the first time in program history. This was a gritty team that played elite defense, made games ugly, and never backed down to anyone. And they weren't done yet. That's only one region. We're just getting warmed up, y'all. If the South region was chaos, the East region was anarchy. This region was supposed to belong to #1 seed Purdue, the Big Ten champs with a 7-4 cheat code named Zach Edey. This region set brackets on fire, starting off with one of the most embarrassing upsets ever. 16th seeded Fairleigh Dickinson had the smallest roster in the field of 68, not a single player over 6'8", and Purdue somehow managed to lose against a team that was a warm-up game. Zach Edey was double-teamed into oblivion. Purdue's guards couldn't hit Ocean from a boat, and FDU just kept running and forcing bad shots. Purdue became only the second #1 seed in history to lose to a 16, and my oh my, with the Boilermakers down, it was anybody's region. Now, let's get to the real star in Florida Atlantic. The FAU Owls were a joke of a basketball program, to put it nicely. Their last and only NCAA tournament appearance before 2023 was in 2001. This was a Conference USA team that nobody respected. They were a 9 seed, and even if you thought about picking them for the second weekend, people looked at you like you were insane. But this team had that sneaky confidence, going 31-3 in the regular season. FAU played like they had nothing to lose, and that made them extremely dangerous. Just like SDSU, FAU almost didn't make it out of the first round. They faced Memphis, the American champs, and this turned into one of the best games of the tournament, possibly even my favorite with how wild the ending was. With under 20 seconds left, Memphis was up by 1 and had the ball. All they had to do was secure the inbounds pass, make it across half court, and take the foul. That's easy, but no, FAU got the steal, the jump ball, and a timeout. From there, they drew up a play, and Nick Boyd put the knife through the hearts of the Tigers fans. What a choke from Memphis. I seriously would have been sick. Survive and advance. A 9 seed and a 16 seed in the second round, not something you see every day, but for the first time in history, a number 16 had a legit shot at making the Sweet 16, and that's what it looked like early on, because the game was close until the second half, where the Owls went on a run to seal it, led by a cool 29 and 12 rebounds from guard John L. Davis. The magic ended for Fairleigh Dickinson, but the real madness was just beginning. This was supposed to be where FAU's run ended. 4-seeded Tennessee was big and physical. They weren't supposed to hang with them, but FAU just kept fighting. Tennessee led by 6 at halftime, but FAU once again turned up the heat, crashing the boards like crackheads looking for their next fix. They got 12 offensive rebounds that turned into 14 second chance points, and this was the difference in the game. The Owls outscored the Vols 40-28 in the second half. Final score, Florida Atlantic 62, Tennessee 55. This was the greatest win in school history for Florida Atlantic. Actually, the last 2 wins were probably also as well, but the dream season kept getting better. Here we go with another thriller, the Elite 8 versus Kansas State, 9 seed versus 3 seed, but I'm going to dumb it down for you. If I told you that a team out-rebounded another 44-22, it would be zero surprise that they won. Although it was nip and tuck at the end for a fun one, it just made sense. FAU was supposed to win this, even with Kansas State's guard Marquise Noel playing out of his mind that tournament, dropping 30. They took down Memphis in a wild one. They crushed FDU's dream. They outfought Tennessee, and they dominated K-State on the glass. Florida Atlantic was headed to Houston, and not to hit the strip club, to play in the Final Four. The Midwest region, this was where the big boys were supposed to dominate. Houston, Texas, Indiana, teams with NBA talent, great coaches, and high expectations, and a lot of people were betting on Houston, the 1 seed, to run through it. Speaking of betting, let me put you guys on some game. I'm going to tell you about an app I've been using called Kalshi Kalshi.com, the only place where you can bet on March Madness in all 50 states. Kalshi is the first and only legal prediction market where you can bet on almost anything. Who wins the Grammys, politics, Bitcoin, sports, anything you want. So let's take a look at what we got. Men's basketball, women's basketball, individual games, and let me teach you how it works. So you see Auburn versus Florida. Auburn at 39 cents, Florida at 62. That means Florida is the favorite. To put this into perspective, if your team has 50 cents, let's say Auburn had 50, that means if you bet 100, you get 200. But since they are the heavy underdog at 39, if you bet 100 on them, they win, you get 244. So let's bet on this game. You click on Auburn, it loads up. You can see exactly what the market's doing. Kalshi has over 1 million users in 50 different states, and they facilitated over $2 billion worth of trades. So what are you waiting for? Put your money where your mouth is. Hit the link in the description below, and the first 500 traders that trade 100 contracts will get a $10 credit. Bang. Now, for a second, we thought this was going to be an all-chalk region. Although there were some good double-digit seed winners in the first round, look at the Sweet 16. No crazy seeds. 1-5, 2-3. Houston, 31-3 record, elite defense, explosive athletes, plus Final Four experience from 2021. They crushed Northern Kentucky in the first round. They overcame Auburn in the second round. Now let's talk about Texas. They won the Big 12 tournament. They had NBA guys. They had multiple scoring threats. But you know what these two teams had in common? They couldn't stop the Canes. Miami's Final Four run wasn't built on luck. It was built on having the hottest backcourt in the country. Guards win in March. Veteran leadership wins in March. And elite shot making wins in March. The Canes had all three. But just like the last two, I sound like a broken record. Miami almost didn't make it past the first round. It was one of their closest games all tourney. 12-seeded Drake was a dangerous mid-major, and they had Miami on the ropes. With under 5 minutes left, the Canes were trailing by 8. It looked like it was all over. Then they ended it on a 16-1 run. They got big stops and big shots from guys like Nigel Pack and Isaiah Wong. From that moment on, they never looked back. In round 2, they sent Indiana packing. Isaiah Wong dropped 27 points like it was nothing. Miami destroyed Indiana on the boards 48-31. They ran the Hoosiers off the court just like Notre Dame did in this year's college football playoff. Final score 85-69. Not much to talk about, just a beat down. This was the game where Miami went from underdog to legitimate Final Four threat. Houston's entire defensive system was built around stopping teams from getting easy shots, but Miami did not care because they destroyed the Cougs defense in transition, getting easy bucks before they could even get set. Also, the Canes exposed Houston's fatal flaw, their lack of offensive power. The Cougs shot 37% from the field, while Miami shot 51%. They could not keep up. Miami turned a rock fight into a track meet, and another #1 seed gone. The Elite Eight comeback. Texas looked unstoppable most of the game. They were hitting everything and were in control. The Longhorns led by 13 in the second half until Miami's guards took over. Jordan Miller played a perfect game. Check out this stat line: 27 points, 7 for 7 field goal, and 13 of 13 from the charity stripe. The Canes closed the game on a dominant 37-17 run. Final score 88-81. Miami's first Final Four appearance ever awaited. Yet another Final Four newbie. That's 3 of them now, but who would the Canes have to play? The West region. It's funny that in a year of all newcomers, we had a familiar team to come wreck the party. But the crazy part, it wasn't a year where they were expected to dominate. By 2023, UConn was already one of the premier programs of college hoops. Numbers don't lie. They had 4 national titles since 1999, the most out of any team during that span. No, in 2023, they weren't a 1 seed though. The Huskies came into the tournament as a 4, and a lot of people overlooked them. Now you're wondering why. They had a massive midseason slump in the Big East. They finished 4th in their own conference. They lost in the tournament semifinals, and they hadn't made it past the first weekend in years. But here's what people forgot. UConn started the season 14-0 and looked like the best team in the country, and they had a coach in Dan Hurley that was built for tournament play. While another 1 seed fell before the second weekend, that being Kansas losing to 8 Arkansas in the round of 32, people saw the writing on the wall with how hot UConn was. UConn opened the tournament against 13th seeded Iona, led led by Rick Pitino, who was coaching like he was auditioning for his next job, because he actually was. And for 20 minutes, Iona looked like they might pull off the upset. At halftime, UConn trailed 39-37. Then in the second half, UConn outscored them 50-24. Adama Sanogo dominated the paint with 28 points and 13 rebounds. Get used to that. UConn 87, Iona 63. Next victim. Round 2. St. Mary's was one of those teams that nobody wanted to play. They had a fantastic year. A 5 seed for them was something special. They were gritty, disciplined, and played elite defense. Once again, it was close at half. It was even a one-possession game at the 13-minute mark in the second half, but as all great teams do, the Huskies pulled away, heating up from the field and never looking back, 70-55, and this may have been their closest game all run. Yes, UConn was just getting warmed up. Arkansas had just eliminated defending champion Kansas. They had all the momentum and confidence they needed to take this game, but UConn humiliated them. After the Huskies went on a 14-0 run midway through the first to take a 34-17 lead, realistically, this game was over. They doubled up the Razorbacks' points in the paint. They doubled up the amount of threes, too. They were just tougher all around. Arkansas had no chance. 3 games, 3 blowouts, but the scariest part, UConn still hadn't played their best game yet. 3-seeded Gonzaga had just survived a classic against UCLA in the Sweet 16, and people were hyping up consensus first-team All-American Drew Timme versus Adama Sanogo as a heavyweight battle. UConn held the Zags to 22 points in the second half. Overall, the Bulldogs shot 2 of 20 from deep, and that's really all that needs to be said. Unfortunately, these UConn games aren't very fun for me to break down because they speak for themselves. They were better on all levels than anyone else. By the final minutes, Drew Timme looked like he just wanted to go home. Final score 82-54. Let me repeat that. UConn 82, Gonzaga 54. They beat a Final Four caliber Gonzaga team in basically any other year by almost 30. This was just scary. The Huskies had an average margin of victory of 22.5 points on their trail to the Final Four, and at this point, there was only one question left. Could anyone stop UConn? The Final Four that nobody expected. First, a mid-major that was typically a make-the-tournament and exit early type of team that took down the #1 overall seed to make their first program Final Four. Second, we had a team that only made March Madness one other time in school history, had no previous recognition for basketball, and made the most of a 1-seeded crash out in the region while winning some ridiculous close ones on the way, the ultimate Cinderella. Then, we had a big-name school known for their football, never basketball, make their first Final Four appearance under a legendary head coach and an electrifying style of play. Finally, the dominant program that was losing respect every year. Back-to-back first-round exits in 21 and 22, and in 17, 18, and 19, they missed the tournament altogether. It was time for this team to get back to what they were known for. Number 5, San Diego State. Number 9, FAU. Number 5, Miami, and number 4, UConn. The first time since seeding began in 1979 that no team seeded better than number 4 made the Final Four. And by the end of it, we witnessed one of the greatest buzzer beaters in history and the most dominant tournament run in decades. FAU versus San Diego State. This was officially the game of the tournament. FAU was America's Cinderella, and San Diego State was a team impossible to kill in close games. They had 2 different play styles. FAU wanted to run and shoot. San Diego State wanted to turn the game into a street fight. FAU controlled the game for 35 minutes. They led by as many as 14 points. They were playing their best game of the season at the best possible time, and with under 10 minutes left, it looked like the Owls were headed for the Natty. Then San Diego State did what they did best. They clawed back, one defensive stop at a time. They held FAU to just 8 points in the final 9 minutes. They started dominating the offensive glass. They grinded their way back into the game, and with less than a minute to go, FAU still had the lead and a chance to seal it. But when they missed a shot with 10 seconds left, San Diego State grabbed the rebound and decided not to call a timeout going the other way, and that's when history happened. Lamont Butler dribbled up the court, time ticking down, one-on-one isolation pull-up J from the baseline, buzzer, and the hit, game over. San Diego State wins. And to be real with you, I was upset. I know most of the country was pulling for FAU, but still, this was one of the best Final Four games we've ever seen. And for a few hours, San Diego State's run felt like destiny. That is, until UConn stepped on the court. When you play UConn in this tournament, you don't beat them, you just survive the beating. They came out on fire, hitting threes, dominating inside, and locking down Miami's offense. They led by double digits in the first half, and Miami tried to fight back, but UConn never let them breathe. The Huskies' defense suffocated the Canes guards and made them feel frustrated, and on the other end, Adama Sanogo was a monster. Jordan Hawkins kept hitting big shots, and Andre Jackson played like a floor general. By the final minutes, it was clear UConn was on a different level, 72-59. The 2023 National Championship. This game was over before it even started. Just to put it in perspective, UConn was favored by 12 points in a natty. That is just ridiculous and says a lot. It felt like San Diego State had no gas left in the tank after their emotional buzzer beater win. Meanwhile, UConn was fresh, locked in, and ready to end all those doubts. It was a 12-point game at half, but we all knew how it was going to turn out. It was one hell of a fight from San Diego State under head coach Brian Dutcher, but no matter how much us fans were pulling for one of the upstart teams to take the title, UConn, a familiar face, cut down the nets. The Huskies only trailed for a grand total of 5 minutes and 22 seconds in the entire tournament. And that's what I love so much about the 2023 NCAA tournament. It had everything: Cinderellas, buzzer beaters, one seeds going down early, and on top of that, the most over-the-top dominant run we've seen in college hoops from a traditional power. In my eyes, it hit all aspects. There was something to love for every type of fan. This sort of chaos embodies March Madness as a whole, and if I had a friend who was born under a rock, had zero clue about sports, and he asked me, "Hey Andrew, what's March Madness like?" I would have him relive 2023. Now, obviously that can't happen, but that's why I put my effort into making a video like this. Plus, this is for all the people who were yearning for upsets in 2025. It was a down year for the Cinderella, or maybe with the continuation of NIL, it will be rare to see another FAU or San Diego State make a run. We don't know, but if that's true, it cements the legacy of 2023 even more. Could this have been the last ever true March Madness?